Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Meta and Apex Legends Competitive Podcast. I am your host, Burke, and today joining me is the IGL for tripods, Onmuu, and today we're discussing macro IGLing and how you can improve your decision making, whether you are in Pro League, Challenger Circuit, or just looking to reach a higher rank. So, Onmuu, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem.
So, Onmuu, you have been a part of Apex Legends in the competitive scene for a long time, and you've been a massive part of the success for multiple rosters. Kangarna getting first place in Champs 2021. You got third in 2022 champs with 100 Thieves. And now with the Tripods roster, you've been slowly rising to the top again. And as we speak, are in third place in BLGS, which is going on right now. So before we dive into the inner workings of macro and decision making, I'm really interested in your journey through ALGS and how you've had such repeated success in such an RNG heavy game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could call it success. I could call it just being consistent. I mean, I don't think I'm necessarily the most successful person in Apex. Yeah, that's for everyone else to decide. But I mean, yeah, I guess just how I find any sort of success. I don't know, kind of keep a level head and just kind of make the right plays that you would make even in scrims.
I like the way you're discussing scrims because I think that is a really important thing that a lot of people don't work on. You specifically, you've been IGLing for how long now?
I've been IGLing my whole career, I'm pretty sure. For a short stint at the beginning, back when I played with like my first roster with Lion and Vayne. Lion was IGLing. So I mean,
That's funny that
it
you're
only
with
went on for
Lion
like
and
3
Vane,
months
and
or something.
of them, you and Vane weren't IGLing it. It was instead Lion. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Lion was a good IGL
yeah,
back then. I mean,
that's true.
he wasn't bad. Not to knock anything on him.
So how did you, coming from that roster, how did you know that you wanted to IGL? Like, what was the sign to you that IGLing was kind of your calling in the scene?
I guess on that roster, I was like kind of like a co-IGL. Lion was just kind of the main IGL, and like just I mean, I guess my next roster it was me, Vayne, and Blitzen after that, and neither of them IGL'd at the time. So I mean, I just kind of said fuck it and stepped into the role, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm really curious because obviously since you stepped into that role, it's you've seen a lot of success with it. What are some of those skills that you have that put you in that category?
I mean, I'd say it's more of like a balancing act of like making sure like like everyone that's IGLing has roughly the same skill set. It's just you got to make sure you use it at the time. I'd say the biggest thing for any IGL, whether they're a veteran IGL or a new one, is you just have to be confident in your call and just not hesitate. Like the saying that everyone says, it's going to be a little cliche, but it's honestly true, is as long as everyone's doing something together, whether it's a bad play or a good play, it's going to work out if like someone's not doing something together. If that makes sense.
Do you think that it comes from like a trust, just building trust with your team? Because I think for a lot of especially like beginning teams, that is one of the biggest concerns is that you can't ever get everyone on the same page to do something. There's a lot of doubt, especially in like teams that have just formed. Do you think that is just building trust, or is there more to it to kind of get on the same page where you can take those decisions together?
Building trust is definitely a big part of it. It's not like obviously the IGL has to trust their teammates, but there's honestly a huge factor of the teammates trusting the IGL. If your two teammates don't believe you're going to be making the right calls, they're going to be hesitant doing what you're trying to say. Or the inverse, it's going to be you'll be trying to call something, then they'll try to call over you, and then causes hesitation, causes people on different pages, and then you just end up dying. So
Yeah.
like if a whole team doesn't have trust in each other or have respect for each other, then yeah, it's not going to go well.
I guess you have to earn a little bit of credibility with that team. And you think that just comes from like playing together? That's just something that comes with time. Is it, I mean, obviously for you having the credibility of your history maybe does some of that groundwork for you. But for new people, how would you suggest like building that trust or going about that?
I mean, I think the biggest problem with a lot of new people is like they hold mistakes that other people make too much against them. Like someone will make a mistake and then that they just let that tear their trust down. But in like reality, like I mean, we're playing a BR. It's like there's some things you're not going to control, and even if you make a mistake, it's bound to happen in at least one of the games. Like someone's going to make a mistake sooner or later. Like you just can't hold it against your teammate. I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of these younger teams is they see someone make a mistake, they start losing trust for them, and start losing respect for them, and then they just don't necessarily listen to them as much and don't think they're worthwhile, and they just kind of let their team crumble from inside.
We've talked in previous episodes about how to communicate with your team and how sometimes you can get too caught up in the previous game. You carry that, you talk too much about it, carry it into the next game. Do you think that the time to bring up those grievances is after a game is finished? Do you have to, is there a time period that's okay to talk about things, or do you think it should be saved for like after scrims or after matches? What is your thoughts on like communicating those concerns?
I mean, I've done a lot of different methods, I guess. Kind of what I'm doing right now is it may sound counterintuitive or counterproductive, but I've just kind of just not said anything after games now, ever since BLGS started. I feel like anytime we would have a conversation after a game, there was like no world where we're seeing eye to eye on anything. It just turns into arguing and turns into like bickering or anything like that. I don't know if it's necessarily if like I've lost respect from like teammates or anything like that, or like if they don't necessarily trust my calls anymore, like if we fuck up something like that. But like I've just stopped saying stuff after games. Sounds counterintuitive, but I just worry about it after. Like if we need to talk about something, we can. But
So
I'm
kind of
just
like
kind of on
save it
the
for
go
VOD
next
reviews.
mentality. Yeah, I mean that, but I'm just kind of on the go next mentality.
Yeah, I like that, and I think for
Fuck
a
up in
lot
a
of
game, it's
teams,
like, oh well. I mean, there's only so much you're gonna fix talking after a game during the fucking series. Like you're not gonna make any groundbreaking changes. Like you've been playing the game the entire time. Like leading up to that, there's no way after one singular game in like a tournament you're gonna be able to just flip a switch and turn and make like massive changes. Like in tournaments, you're always gonna fall into like what you've traditionally done, if that makes sense.
I've never heard someone say that, and I think you're spot on because, like you said, yeah, it's really just you've already spent so much time practicing these things. Right now, the only thing it really can do for you is ruin the vibes and get your head outside of the games that you're in. If you're
Yeah,
worrying about trying
exactly.
to fix this random thing that in a heavily RNG based game, if you're like, oh, I died because I didn't, peak this angle correctly, and now that's all in your head going to the next game, that's not really helping you practice and continue the things that you've worked on until that point. If anything, it's getting in the way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really, I really could resonate with that. I think a lot of
I
people
mean,
could take that.
that's either like that's either going to be a good approach for some teams or a bad approach. Personally, I think if you have a team where everyone's able to take a lot of criticism and not have it affect their gameplay and just like look at it from the perspective of being like, yeah, we're only talking about these things because we all want to win and all want to do better. They're not sitting here pointing fingers and being like, you're terrible, fix this. It's coming from being like, hey, this is what we could do different to make sure we get further on as a team or further on past this point in the game.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's going to be helpful for a lot of people. So to go into kind of the main topic I want to talk to you about, which is like macro IGLing, I think for a lot of people, they don't fully grasp really what macro is and why it's important. Could you just quickly kind of break down what macro is and then what the important aspects of macro are in Apex Legends?
Yeah, I mean, so just like your macro game plan, macro IGLing, whatever you want to call it, that's basically everything in the game that is not like a snap decision or like a micro call where like, hey, we're going to go push this fight or hey, we're going to do this, like kind of in the heat of the moment. A macro plan is kind of just like the base plan at what you are doing to get you to from point A to point B. So, for example, your macro starts right when you're out of the dropship. It starts with the POI you're choosing, how you're looting that POI, what you're going to do if you have beacons, what you're going to do if you don't have beacons, everything along those lines. And obviously, like in Apex and really any competitive game, it's never going to go according to plan. Like you can plan out everything to the last detail, but you're never going to play a game where every single thing that you planned out is going to go right. And that's where your micro IGLing and your micro decisions come in. Like, say you wanted to go to this building in zone, but someone's in that building in zone, and now you have a team pushing you. It's like now you got to make a decision whether you push the team pushing you and decide to fight, or run to the next safest spot that's not the building. Those are like those micro decisions. Like kind of stay like the macro, I guess an easy way to put it is kind of a game plan. And your micro is your decisions to try to stay on course to achieve the main goal of that game plan.
So what do you think are the most important skills that a player should be honing to be able to work on that macro? Is it a lot of work that you put in outside of the game? Is it more inside of the game? Is it kind of an even split? And specifically, what things should be people be working on to improve their macro?
The things for, I guess, macros, just first thing you got to decide what kind of team you want to be. You and your teammates, like, you got to just kind of weigh your strongest skill sets. Like, for a while with tripods, we were playing a little bit more edge focused, especially in CC, because we were like, hey, we're better than everyone in here. Let's
Right.
just fucking fight them and run everyone over. Obviously, the edge play style is high risk, high reward. You're either getting a lot of kills and getting like decent placements, or you are getting folded in your first fight and getting 0 points. So I kind of like when it comes to higher like level tournaments and better competition, I've kind of leaned more towards the zone play style, just simply because like it's less variables. Like if you can get in zone in good lobbies and just use a positional advantage, you can usually end up just killing teams from that spot if you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I was curious about that because I know I've watched a lot of your previous stuff in the past. I actually did a VOD review on my channel. Back then, at least, you played for a lot of like Ring 3, I noticed.
Mhm.
And like you prioritize Ring 3, which I want to get to in a little bit. But do you think right now, um, obviously you talked about there's the benefits of like on edge be prepared to spectate a lot, but if you're not gonna if you're not winning your fights, otherwise it is a high risk high reward zone. You're gonna get if you're good at it and you're fast, you can guarantee some really solid placement points, but picking
Mhm.
up kills is going to be harder. Do you have a you said do you prefer zone, or do you play more of like a flex? I know there's some people that say right now that like there's only flex play, but I don't know that I fully agree to that. What do you subscribe to at the moment, especially in this Newcastle meta?
I'd say it's really, really POI dependent. Uh, Obviously, we're playing every single map in
Yeah.
not Olympus in BLGS, so it's very POI dependent how you're going to be able to decide how you play. If you notice, we've opted to choose for like really zone heavy POIs, except
Yep.
on Stormpoint, just because we really enjoy Stormpoint, and even then, fucking Zeus isn't even that bad of a zone POI. You can get some pretty quick rotations from it.
I I stand by Zeus as his own POI. It's I mean that balloon you
You
can
could
get.
definitely do either. That
Yeah.
balloon gets you really, really far, but
Yeah.
you can definitely loot up and come in on edge still off
Yeah.
that POI, just because everyone ahead of you is already probably going to be rotating.
Yeah, and the Evo on that side of the map is like super isolated too, which is
Yes,
nice.
there's it's very easy to get your evos up there. But like we've opted for zone style POIs. Like we have Hammond Labs on Olympus. We're playing Harvester on World's Edge. Blossom is a little bit more of a wild card, but that map is so new, it's kind of hard to necessarily narrow down a zone and an edge POI.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to go into depth why we like Blossom, uh,
Don't
obviously,
give away the
but
secrets. You got two
yeah,
more weeks.
yeah. Whether people want to try to take it or not, I mean, who cares? I'm not
Yeah.
going to really sit here and talk about it, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah. And then obviously Kings Canyon, we're landing on the bunker in the river town, so we chose a lot more zone focused POIs for the simple fact that like, hey, a lot of these lobbies leading up into finals, it's like half pro league teams, half CC teams, and maybe like one or two teams that are like Cinderellas that necessarily shouldn't have made it that far.
Yep.
Speaking respectfully, but it's the truth. Um, so we kind of just wanted to limit like the, I guess, RNG and not put ourselves in a bad spot. Because like with our like macro and our like knowledge on like rotating in the game, if we chose zone POI, we can get a really good spot a majority of the time. Whereas like half the lobby is kind of like not necessarily, I would say, as good at macro than us, simply because they're like CC or like newer form teams.
Right. So is that, with that kind of knowledge, are you? I've talked about priority before in some of my videos, and um, obviously, you have your like high priority POIs neighboring you, and there's some factors for like low prio that can POIs that there's one in between, but you still might be able to make it. Do you take a little bit more leeway with what's high priority to you because the macro of the teams around you isn't as good? Like if there's a team in between you and even though they have ring console, you're like, I could probably beat them to that POI just because I have more experience.
Um, I'd definitely say that's a factor, but like usually it comes down to like seeing what zone polls being looking towards our rotate, and we kind of just count what teams have a zone beacon. For example, if you had to rotate the artillery and containment doesn't have a zone beacon, we're like, all right, this team doesn't have a zone beacon. RD zones are usually pretty easy to read. They're probably just going to go sit in one of the big buildings because it's like they don't know what way it's pulling. They don't know exactly what buildings to play, or they're going to sit on 82. One of those two.
Right. So you can kind of just thread the needle through and find the right spots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's a really good thing. I've talked about this before because I feel like there is obviously if you don't have a ring console, you're going to be sitting on your hands. You could take a guess, or you can kind of
Yeah.
or you can play for another beacon. You can do a delayed survey beacon to get the information, which is now a lot more reliable. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like you're going to lose those better spots unless you're taking a
Mhm.
wild gamble, which is just typically not super worth it.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, and do you find that macro is harder to, like, your macro plans work out less often in the BLGS environment where there's a lot of teams that don't necessarily have that experience? Or is it, I guess the way to put this is, your macro plan more end up often successful in BLGS or in like an ALGS environment where all these teams are pro league teams? They have a lot more predictable pathing. Um, do you find that like your plans are uprooted more in BLGS?
I wouldn't say that. I'd say the macros honestly pretty consistent throughout BLGS and ALGS. I think the bigger issue for us, at least, was our micro.
Could you elaborate on
Like,
that?
yeah, we weren't, I guess, being as confident, or at least myself, I can say, I wasn't being as confident with my calls. So it led us to hesitation and missing opportunities, or potentially just not being on the same page with each other and getting us killed. I'd say that's one of the bigger things that changed in BLGS is ever since I kind of was just like, all right, well, I'm not going to talk about anything after games anymore because it's like we're not going to agree with what we're
Right.
saying. It's like I'm just going to call what I think we should be doing. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's kind of how I've been doing our micro.
So
And then obviously having Gent as well on the team, he not only does he put out an insane amount of damage, but he also helps a lot with some of the micro decisions. There's a lot of times where he's even just like taking over and saying, we need to go fight this or go third this or go look over here or rotate this way, stuff like that. So he is a really big help on that.
yeah, I kind of wanted to ask about that because I think this is a common um misconception about the IGL role, or maybe just like um a poor assumption from a lot of people, is that like the IGL doesn't necessarily need to do everything. And I think
No.
that often IGLs are, people say there's macro IGLs and there's micro IGLs, and that definitely is true. But I think a lot of IGLs really have super successful macro and then rely on somebody else that's really good at micro. And I think that's a really good structure because ultimately they are two entirely different skill sets.
I don't think a micro IGL and a macro IGL is necessarily a thing. I
Oh,
don't really
interesting. Okay.
think that's a thing at all. All that's going to cause is like you're going to get into a spot where like someone's not saying anything or the IGL isn't saying anything because it's like he's reading it as like the micro IGL needs to be
Right.
saying something. Then the micro IGL is reading it as like, dude, why aren't you saying anything? And like that kind of deal. I really think why some people see success with that is they stop looking at it as like the main problem. What you just said, like with some teams think if you're the IGL, you need to just be saying everything and coming up with everything. When in reality, that's not necessarily true. I look at the IGL as just kind of like, I guess, a conductor of a fucking train. They're there to make sure everyone's on the same pace, on the same
Right.
timing, is all doing the same thing. Obviously, like the IGL is probably coming up with more of the rotates, but I mean, you're sitting there running around doing nothing at the beginning of the game. Like
Yeah, exactly.
you could have anyone come up with your rotates. Like I think the micro, like the dynamic micro IGL, macro IGL, I think it's really just people like not being afraid to voice their opinion on what they should be doing at a time.
It's interesting because like they are two skill sets, but at the same time, if you get too strong with the roles, you can make it to a point where someone else is not willing to speak, and you have to be able to take opportunities when you see them. And you have three sets of eyes looking at every opportunity.
Yeah,
The reality is
exactly.
like you can't see everything. You can't see an opportunity. If someone sees something, they're like, "We need to jump on this." It's up. You got to be able to trust that person to make their call, and they can't be like, "I can't say anything because I'm not the micro IGL."
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah,
it, like like micro IGLing and macro IGLing, or I guess it's not like just some galaxy brain mega mind
yeah.
that like it has to be the person that does it. Like when it comes down to it, we're professional players. Like everyone should know. Like, yeah, we should have third partied this fighter. Yeah, we should have pushed over there. So like, if you see it, you can fucking call it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the macro IGLing, it's like that stuff. You usually already have that planned how you're gonna play the game, just before the game even starts. It's like you're just following your game plan at that point. Obviously, like beacons and stuff like that could change that a little bit, and like zone and stuff like that. But I mean, usually every team's like rotating the same way that they would, or like on the same side of the map, even in scrims that they normally would be in tournaments. Like, so your macro's already decided. Scrim just gets inty when it comes down to the micro side because people are like, "Fuck it, let's fight," and it's like I don't blame them. I mean, it's their practice; they can do whatever they want with it. It's just if you're gonna take those fights and then like get to like actual game day and be hesitant to take fights in the first place, and it's like, all right, well, why do you spend this whole time practicing fighting? But I don't know. That's a whole different topic. I could talk about scrim quality forever, but
I mean, I think it's definitely an important discussion because at the end of the day, like I think there are separate motivations going into scrims. I think a lot of people do have separate intentions, and that can really ruin the quality at times. I'm more curious of the on kind of harping back on this macro. The You discussed a little bit about this, and you were talking about how anyone can do a rotate, right? Like there's a lot of aspects of the macro that are almost pre-planned. Like a lot of the work seems like it's put in beforehand. So would you say that like majority of your macro is stuff you're working on, like you're rehearsing more so outside of the game, or like during scrims where it's like, if X then Y? Is it a lot of that, or is there a more intuitive in the moment macro sense that's more important?
um, I mean, it's hard for me to say on a lot of that because I mean, I've been playing the game for like 5 years. So like I feel like a lot of the stuff macro-wise just kind of comes naturally. Like you can kind of look at like where teams are on the map and look at your position and be like, yeah, we needed to push this team, or yeah, we needed to go here and like wait, or yeah, we needed to go to the middle of the zone and then third party outwards on this zone or stuff like that. Like it's not necessarily like setting up your macro beforehand outside and like rehearsing it. Like I've never personally done that. What I'm saying is just like trying to like realize like when you're in those situations what you have to call. That's kind of like how I've decided the macro.
I like that a lot. I'm curious. I think this kind of harps a little bit back to what you were saying earlier, which is the confidence. And because at the end of the day, it's not just the identifying the call, which, like you said, a lot of it comes from experience. Other people, obviously, if you're trying to make up for the lack of experience, you could do some preparation outside the game. But at the end of the day, it's one, identifying what the correct call is through that catalog you've built through experience or through studying or whatever it is. And then two, just having the confidence to make that call and act on it. right? Am I wrong? Does that seem like the fair assessment of kind of what you're summarizing here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that for a lot of people, the way to kind of take that, I think that seems pretty clear for everybody. One thing I wanted to talk a little bit more about, because we talked about the ideas of zone play and edge play styles. I want to talk a little bit more about the flex play and specifically ring three, because like I was talking about before, I noticed when I was voting, I gotta look back when this was. Maybe
That's deep back
LCQ,
there.
maybe.
Yeah, that is deep back there. I don't
It's
know.
pretty deep in the archives. But I noticed back then, at least, you played a lot of Ring Three, which for people listening, basically is, you know, you wait for the round two to close and you hit the ring console for the third ring before making your rotate into end zone. And it seemed like even when you had a solid idea of where the zone might pull, you would still play for those ring three consoles just to have a better shot at securing a place. You'd hit a survey beacon often and then play off that information. Um, I can't remember if you were playing Valk back then or you'd rip a balloon, but either way, do you still feel like do you still rely a lot on the playing for ring three? Do you feel like there's a lot of benefits to that play style?
Yes, I would definitely say so in a Newcastle meta. Um, Newcastle, the big benefit that he gets that pretty much no other character is going to give you is the ability to slam a spot that is good on ring 3 or 4 that is not good on ring 1 and 2. So, like, you're able to slam and play a spot and get there before anyone else and set up on a spot for ring 3 and 4 that maybe like cuts off another team's rotate and makes it very hard for them to even kill you because you're sitting behind a wall, you have shields, you have Qs, like it's and obviously you're shooting them too. So it gives you like the ability to be certain on where to go slam and then put yourself on a timer that like, hey, we survived for 20 seconds or however long until zone's closing in this spot. We are in a prime spot then after then. And we're not going to be getting pressured as much. I'd say Ring 3 and all that stuff is like a more specific Newcastle uh, benefit in my eyes. I mean, it's got its benefits without Newcastle, but it's definitely
A lot easier.
magnified with Newcastle.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I think a lot of people are now even starting to adopt that. Maybe not even. There's a lot of people even pulling, like Ring Four Valkults into it, and there's a lot of um, even later reactions now
Mhm.
with the Newcastle than even playing for Ring Three necessarily. I would say, but you're right. Like the absolutely with the Newcastle, it elevates that a lot. What are your thoughts on the Newcastle meta? And what do you think are like the most important things to know with with that character?
I mean, I don't mind Newcastle meta. I think he's a pretty. Not only I think he's a hard character to play, I think he has a good skill gap. Like you can tell a bad Newcastle from the difference between a good Newcastle pretty easily.
What would you say
And
are the biggest
that
tells?
not burning their util. Um, being I guess being conscious with the Q. Sometimes like just spiking the ground with the Q and wasting it is ends up getting you killed, or slamming first. Like second wall, especially in a Newcastle meta, is when you're taking a close range fight is definitely better. Because it's like if you slam first, you already know what's going to happen. They're going to just come slam your wall next. Not only is it pushing your way, but now your wall's gone and they have an energized wall right in front of you. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like Newcastle, it's kind of like a balancing act of knowing when you need to use your utility. And if you burn it without needing it, it often leads to you getting killed. Much like Gibby way back then.
yeah. I
You
was gonna
burned
say
your
when you
bubble,
said the bubble,
you
yeah,
got
you
killed.
burn the bubble early, you're done.
Yep.
It's very interesting that like the hardest counter to Newcastle, aside from like the cover angle, is actually the alt, because like a Newcastle alt just instantly destroys, the only thing that instantly destroys another Newcastle alt, which is insane to me.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's got other counters, obviously, too. Like Crypto EMP de energizes it,
Yeah.
Crypto EMP breaks the Q, stuff like that. Fuse is a pretty good counter for the Q specifically, not necessarily the wall, unless you have a certain angle on it.
Yeah.
Um, what else? I mean, Seer used to be a good one when you got canceled.
Rampart.
You got yeah, Rampart's not a bad one. The only thing with Rampart is as you're shooting, they can definitely it takes good coordination and good timing, but they can definitely triple peek the wall and potentially knock you if they're all shooting the Rampart.
Right.
Odds are that never happens though. I mean, no one's that coordinated, so that's like perfect world scenario.
Yeah, I've been championing for Trev Stacks to bring back his Sheila.
And that guy just shoots balloons, dude. Just
I've been
he just be
telling
shooting
him
balloons from like 400 meters away.
that's what I need. I had him on for an interview. That was the one thing I was like, man, you're not taking a balloon anywhere near that guy.
Now you just get to the point where you don't even use them at that point.
Yeah.
And
So
of course, funny thing about that is the one balloon I didn't see that guy shoot was in fucking CC to qualify for Pro League, and we were in the trenches. We were in like 16th place or something. The one balloon he doesn't shoot, he got him fucking killed. So like, and we ended up getting eighth because of that after those games. So
oh
I
man.
mean, God bless to him, I guess. But
That's how it
like, I swear to
goes.
God, that guy will shoot my balloon 400 meters away, but the one balloon he didn't shoot in fucking staging, they ended up losing the game for it.
That's wild. It really was always so funny to watch. I think that's why they like a lot of people were very like would ape that team in Pro League just because it's like, man, I need this guy to not shoot out my evacs late, like,
Yeah.
and Loba to not
A lot of
steal all
the
my
evacs
stuff.
weren't even gonna like grief him or anything either. He was
No,
just shooting him.
no, you just it's chaos. You know, you gotta. They have a plan.
Yeah.
You don't want to let them have it. But I'm also curious because, like, on the note of evacs, what are your thoughts currently on Valk within this? Because obviously we're talking about this ring 3 and the importance of, you know, hitting this ring console, seeing where the zone is a little bit later rather than playing a hard zone angle, and then deciding to rotate in with the knowledge you have now. And Valk with their passive of seeing through the walls now and being able to identify where all the teams are, then partnered with Newcastle who can make even a decent spot really good. What do you think? Do you think that Valk is a necessity right now, or do you think, you know, you can substitute an evac, you can substitute a Pathfinder ultimate? What are your thoughts on Valk specifically within that meta?
I don't think Valk's that useful at all. Honestly, I don't think she's that good. I mean, she has her benefits, sure, but like, you got to think when you're doing that type of Newcastle slam on ring 3, you're usually getting a zone beacon and a UAV. And then you're looking to rotate instantly right off that UAV. So you don't necessarily need the Valk UAV when you're flying to a spot that you already UAV scanned.
Right.
So it's like it's kind of just a wasted character because by the time when you land and get there, it's like, well, what's Valk useful for you now? You're not going to rip her ult ever again. She has a Q that like I guess is all right, but like
Very vulnerable.
you can get more utility out of other characters. Like imagine slamming like a spot that you can't get necessarily pushed out of and is a really good spot for zone 3, and you have like a charged Pathfinder zip instead where like someone's fighting on your edge, you just go and third your edge. Now you have a whole like quadrant of the map because you cleared your edge.
That's been my number one frustration with the current meta because we saw how good Pathfinder could be at like split 2 playoffs, and then I think everyone just kind of forgot about how good Pathfinder is because Pathfinder's so. I think I totally agree with you. I think in 9 times out of 10, Pathfinder is a way better solution than Valkyrie.
Yeah. The only time Valkyrie would be a better solution is if you don't have a UAV beacon.
Yeah, which
But
they're
at
on
that point, you're just blind
everywhere.
slamming anyway, so it's like
Yeah, that's true. And it's also, I think there's a mindset shift that you have to be careful with when you're playing a Valk because you do, I think especially like even the old Valk metas, I always thought it was the same way. Is like there's a lot of teams that are using Valk ults that would never have used that in that situation, but they're
yeah,
just like, oh, we have this tool. Why don't we see if this will work? And
yeah,
and
exactly.
it doesn't. And then you're like, it's very gambly. It feels like gambling is what it feels
Mhm.
like.
And the funny thing is, you see that all the time on game day. You never see that in scrims though, and that just comes down to people playing. To put it bluntly, they're playing like pussies on game day. But
Yep.
they'll like people have like Valkyrie as a selection, and then it's like there's one team in front of them, and it's an isolated 3v3. And scrims are taking it every time. It's like whether they win
Yeah.
it or not, they're like, "Fuck it, let's kill these guys."
Exactly.
Button ALGS or VLGS, they're like, well, we have a Valk ult, we can just rip that, and then they end up flying in. Someone gets smoked out of the air, someone lands split, someone lands on top of someone else, and I don't know. It's just a fucking mess where it's like you, for one, you can't ever practice that in scrims because it's not really that congested of endgames.
Yeah.
You can't even develop that skill really. And for two, it's like you just have one team in front of you. Why don't you just go fight them? Like you don't need the Valk ult.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about the charged Pathfinder zip too, and I think the same thing, like you said, like there's so many times in the late game where, especially in like E District, where oh, we want to, we could take this height while they're fighting in this building. The Valk can just fly up there, but then the Newcastle either has to burn ult to take the height, and then what happens to the third if it's like a catalyst or something like that? They're just left complete on the ground. So it's like you can't. They have to almost fight separately in an end game because there's no shared utility that Valk provides in those situations.
Like Valk is definitely good for what she does. Like if you get bad RNG on evacs and don't have evacs, then yeah, Valk is good for that. But like odds are, if you're playing Ring 3, you're gonna have an evac.
Yeah, and you have how many support bins to pull one? I think I'm
exactly.
pretty sure. Yeah,
Since you're all playing Newcastle, it's like bin reset comes up. Like you're probably gonna have an evac.
Yeah. And at
I'd say
that
it's
point,
more
it's
often
just
than
like,
not.
yeah, at that point, it's just like really unlucky.
Yeah.
It's
And then you can't even like make necessarily the case for argument that like playing Valk for your early game rotate is worth it because it's like, well, hitting beacons with Pathfinder and scanning those packages, you're getting 2 zip lines before Valk would even be getting a ult. So it's like
it's insane.
it's like you might as well just play a Pathfinder at that point and have more versatility and
Yeah.
utility at the end of the game rather than a
Not
character
even to
that
mention
is
his
just
ability to
sitting
hit
there
Evo.
throwing a Q. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I 100% agree with you. I'm glad I felt like I was going crazy there for a minute because I've been thinking that like since everyone swapped to Valk, I was like, I don't know where people like Pathfinder did get nerfed. I'm like, where is this like sudden change in interest? Obviously the Valk passive, but yeah, it's good to see someone else.
I'm gonna
On the
be
same
honest,
end of
it's probably a little bit of people like not wanting to take fights on game day either.
Yeah, it's definitely a more like
I've definitely had
pick.
my fair share of ripping Valk ults, not because I wanted to take a fight or anything like that, but if you're just ripping a Valk ult instead of taking like the isolated 1v1 in front of you, unless it's like an insanely hard fight.
Right.
Like, I mean, they're sitting on a like insane high ground head glitch. You're pushing through like an opening on them. Like you're probably not going to win that fight. So there's no point to fucking throw yourselves at it. Then you might as well Valk ult. But like they're all like you see a lot of these Valk teams. Like the fight's really not that hard of a fight for them to take ahead of them, and they just Valk ult instead.
Yeah. And it's like you do have all this utility with like, if you're running a catalyst, you have a ton of utility to either get out or get around or also just take the fight isolated. Or, Newcastle also helps a ton with that. Pathfinder would also help a ton with that. I think that overall, like the winning the fight, you just have way better chance as well. And honestly, I don't know
100%.
that. I mean, other than like E District, there's not a lot of situations that a Pathfinder charge zip wouldn't get you out of as well.
Yep. That Pathfinder charge zip, and I said it right when I think I said it before the end of the like last split of or split 2 regular season for NA Pro League. We were playing Path for a little bit and I wanted to stick it. I don't think we are all on the same page wanting to play Path, but I literally said it's the best ability in the game, the charge zip. Like,
yeah, I'd agree with you.
The amount of times, like especially back then, you could catch somebody like not paying attention or not necessarily as close to a teammate and just triple zip on them. Like that guy's dead for sure.
Yeah.
Like you take maybe 50 damage on a charge zip if one guy's looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, even in an end zone, you can still manage to pull off some crazy stuff with it.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
pretty insane. Yeah, even like
charge zip is the best ability in the game for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with
It's
you.
up there with the Horizon Q, which I'm surprised a lot of people aren't playing her still. But
you think Horizon still has some area? For
if you're a good Horizon, you can still do crazy things on Horizon.
Interesting. I think this will be a lot for people to take away with because I think obviously we went a little bit into the meta, but I'm glad we did because I think there's some really good insight that hopefully we'll see a little bit more Pathfinders run in BLGS the next 2 weeks. We'll see. But I really appreciate you having me on, or me having you on. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, and, man, I'm running it over here. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
dude.
I appreciate you for letting me on here. Um, so before we close out, I just wanted to quick ask, what is the vibes with tripods? What can we expect from you guys going forward?
I mean, we're just playing, man. Playing the game.
Maybe a
All
BLGS
I got.
trophy.
Yeah, if there's a trophy, I mean, obviously that's something we'd want.
Hell yeah.
I mean, we're just playing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
obviously we didn't
excited.
qual for champs, so we're not going to be there. This is all we got until Pro League starts. That
Yeah,
is if we get an invite. I imagine, if it goes off the same criteria as in the past, we would.
it'd
But
be insane to see you guys not get an invite. I would be shocked.
yeah, I mean, if we don't, we don't. It is what it is. We'll just have to, qual ourselves. But if it's off the same criteria as last time, we should get an invite.
Well, that's good to hear.
'Cause
I'm
obviously, I think
definitely
if you made a LAN, you got an invite. So
Yeah, I think I can speak for everyone saying we definitely want to see you there. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to see you hopefully bring home a BLGS trophy if there is an actual trophy, or maybe it's just like a nice big handshake or something. I don't know.
ah man, I don't even know if I want a nice wig handshake.
Fair enough. So Amu, where can everyone find you? And is there anything on like your content side that you're doing?
I mean, I've been dabbling a little bit more into YouTube. One of my mods on Twitch, he just kind of like throws YouTube videos together every now and then, and just posts them on my YouTube.
Cool.
It's kind of more like just highlights. It's not like anything too crazy. I'm trying to come up with some content ideas. I think I got a couple. I think I wanted to do kind of bring back from what I did a couple years ago with my buddy Blitzen, where we solo queued Masters, Pred, whatever you want to call it, but like we do it through Parsec, so he's controlling the keyboard and I'm on the mouse,
It's
something
amazing.
like that.
That would be fun to watch.
Yeah, we got to like plat or something in like one session of playing last time we tried it, and like 2 or 3 years ago, and then we just never played again. I don't know why, but
It's like a
I think we
surgeon
got busy.
simulator kind of vibe.
Yeah, it was funny. It was good stuff. It's people don't realize how hard it is to actually aim if you're not controlling the movement.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Forget
it's
strafing at all.
yeah, it's definitely a good time. So I mean, I might bring that back, and I don't know. We'll think of some other stuff content wise, but other than that, obviously, my Twitter is just Onmuu, it's an underscore. My Twitch is Onmuu with 2 U's, so might have an underscore. I don't even know, man.
Well, I'll link them all. I'll link them all in the
I got no
description.
clue.
So everyone on YouTube and on Spotify, you'll be able to see them all. So Onmu, thank you again. Everybody, you can follow me on Twitter as well. Keep up to date with my uploads, and you can see my live VOD reviews that I'm doing over on twitch.tv/BurkTN, a little brand change. And like and subscribe here. Comment and let me know which topics you'd like to see me cover next, and I'll see you in the next one.